I guess I'm going to start. Okay, so usually when you go to a Japanese restaurant, you will see a sushi roll, and a lot of times they use rice, right? But tonight I'm not going to use rice. I am going to be using, they have Israeli couscous here, and this one says pearl couscous. It's the same thing. And pearl couscous is made out of a wheat durum, which is a little harder wheat, and it makes it really ideal for making pasta. And it also has a higher protein content. So this one here, for every third cup, you're probably going to get about 6 grams of protein. This is a tricolored one, so this is infused with spinach powder and carrot powder. And so this one has 8 grams. Okay, so it's pretty high, it's really nice. So that's for every third cup. And I boil this in about a 1.5 cup of hot water, and then I pour the 1 cup of pearl couscous, 10 minutes, and then you get this. These little pearl balls, okay, really nice. And so usually the sushi will have some sort of a sweet and sour element to it. So, you know, I just kind of made up my own. You don't really need to do it, but I did a little bit of lemon juice, and just, it's really up to you. You can juice an entire lemon and maybe a teaspoon of maple syrup here, and you just drizzle it on your pearl couscous, mix that up, and then we're going to spread it on this sushi, on this seaweed. And this is 100% seaweed. There is no salt, there's no MSG on this one, so that's a great brand. And you can find this in just about any of the larger supermarkets here. So just be careful, make sure that it doesn't have the sodium and the MSG on there.
I tasted this for the first time by itself, and it tastes a lot like white rice, which is really nice. It's got a very neutral flavor, and so I never imagined that you could make sushi with this. So I'm really excited. And plus, the fiber content is about the same as brown rice, but it's softer than brown rice. So when you make a sushi roll with it, this is actually a really nice alternative. So genius.
Oh, thank you. But I like it also because it's softer, and like I said, it has that protein. All right, so I'm going to add some more protein to this. And you know, there's no rule, right? You can add whatever protein you want. You can do beans, but I'm just going to add tofu because I really, really do love tofu. And then I'm going to add carrots. You know how the California roll will usually have carrots and cucumbers, and of course, my favorite, avocado. And then, if you want if you want to put a little vegan mayonnaise, you can. What I did is I did vegan mayonnaise and more avocado. I smashed it together, and I just kind of put it here in the sushi.
Well, that's looking beautiful.
And then G is going to wrap it because she's really good at wrapping. I'm not. When I'm at home, I just wrap it and I eat it. So.
Koreans are expert kimbap makers. We would like to say that the kimbap is original to us, but I guess it might have been the Japanese. I don't know. So, I should put some gloves on.
That's okay. It's only Carmen that's going to eat it.
I did wash my hands today. So. Okay. So when you roll, it's nice to have this bamboo roll because it really helps you tighten it.
So you're kind of pressing along the way, right?
Yes, and pressing it and putting it into place.
Okay. Now, do you wet the edges to seal it at the end?
If it's wet, it will seal on its own, okay, as long as there's something sticky attached to it.
There you go. Wow, G, you're an expert. Awesome.
Okay, and now we'll just cut it.
So see how she cuts it? She doesn't go down. You kind of, like a saw, right? You cut it like a saw. There you go. And there you go, you guys. You have a wonderful, delicious, protein-packed sushi roll.
The other thing that's really nice to put in sushi is mushrooms. I don't care for them raw in there, but when they're... Yeah.
Enoki mushrooms.
Enoki mushrooms, we were going to put them in.
I was going to put them in, but I absolutely forgot.
Enoki mushrooms. I've never seen those before.
And Carmen can put it in her mouth separately.
Yeah. All right, G.
That's a new mushroom for me.
I believe that came from Japan.
The enoki.
Enoki? Yes.
So, would you like to taste one?
Thank you so much. I'm tempted, but I only eat 2 meals a day, and if I start eating, it'll make me hungry, and then I'll want to eat more.
Good answer. You passed the test. Would you like to taste?
Yes. I love these things, so I can eat them forever.
I actually tasted one of these, and it tasted really, really good. We thought we'd miss the soy sauce and wasabi, which is nice to complement it with, but by itself already, it's really, really delicious.
Okay, so now you're going to make the lettuce wrap.
Okay. So when we think about these, okay, I'll just use this. When I think about these ingredients on cooking in front of you, it's hard because we really can't cook anything. So we had to pick a recipe where we can just put it together. The only thing that I cooked here is the tofu. And the tofu, the best way to cook it, there's 2 versions. I will share one and she will share another. Tofu, who does not like tofu? Because it's really mushy, correct? It's gross. Okay, the great thing about tofu is if you cook it right, it can taste like chicken. Okay, you just have to crispen the outside, and then whatever flavor you put it in, it infuses, it absorbs that very well like a sponge. And so what I did with this tofu is I first just put some Pam in, and you can also get a oil spray. I guess that would be good as well. Maybe like a tablespoon. After I put this on so it doesn't stick very well, then I added a tablespoon of oil, and then I just cubed these very small, and then I just put it on the frying pan and then just let it cook there, probably on medium heat, until you see the edges crispen. So you'll be there for a while. That's the only cooking part. And after this is semi-cooked and it's crispy on the edges, then I add the soy sauce. I think the recipe is up there, right? Oh, the recipe is not up there. Okay. So to that, I add the, after it's cooked, you can ask to add 1 tablespoon soy sauce is fine, 1 table maple syrup, and I put a little bit of mushroom seasoning. Who has heard about mushroom seasoning? Yes, us vegetarians love that. And when you go to Heavenly Veggies, they have mushroom seasoning, which is a mushroom extract powder, which makes everything very savory and delicious and adds a depth of flavor to all your soups or whatever you make. So when you add that to this, maybe half a tablespoon, along with your 1 tablespoon soy sauce and, what do you call this, the oil, then it will just infuse into there and it tastes really delicious. And so that's what I'm going to add first. That's one of the main ingredients. Can you tell us a little bit about the tofu?
So tofu is an extremely healthy food. It's been used in Asian cultures for probably centuries, I would guess. Anyway, it's very high in a lot of different compounds, and I don't have them all memorized, but it has a lot of manganese and calcium and zinc, phosphorus, omega-3 fats. It's just loaded with all kinds of good things. In fact, many studies have shown that tofu is even better than soy, other forms of soy, in preventing stomach cancer. It's like when you were asking if people like tofu, and I ask my patients this a lot. Have you ever had tofu? Some of them say no. Others say, I don't like it. I said, you just haven't had it made right. Because tofu is absolutely delicious. And like she was saying, the best thing about it is, by itself, it's extremely bland, and it just soaks in the flavors of whatever you put in it. So you can season it however you want. You can make it sweet, you can make it sour, you can make it savory, you can make it into creams and sauces, and you can make it like chicken.
Into dessert.
Into desserts. You can do all kinds of things with it. You can make vegan mayonnaise out of it. You can make a sour cream. You can do almost anything with it, those kind of things. You can make it and put it into smoothies, yes. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize about tofu is if you take it and freeze it before you do anything else with it, if you get the refrigerated kind, do yourself a favor and open it up and drain the water off first, or you'll spend a long time thawing it out. But if you freeze it for 24 hours or more, it changes it to the texture of chicken meat. Totally different texture. And the longer you freeze it, the more it becomes that way. And then you can chop it up and season it however you can make a chicken salad sandwich, quote, chicken salad sandwich, all kinds of things. It's just marvelous.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to quickly zoom through the rest of the ingredients. We're running short on time. To that I add a cup of fresh bean sprouts and yellow bell peppers, red bell peppers, green bell peppers. And then this is called chestnuts, water chestnuts. I found this in, what's that store called? The Asian store in Dededo? American Grocery, yes. This is a version I found in American Grocery, but it only requires a small can. This one's a big one. And then to that, I add some chopped green onions and also some cilantro, but I won't use all of it. And then, because Dr. DeRose said that beans are so good, I decided to marinate and cook these beans similar to the tofu, similar ingredients, and I decided to cook it the same way, and then I'm adding that as well. So that's all you do, and then you just toss them together.
I found those beans were really delicious.
Yeah?
I would
I'm
love
glad
it,
you liked
yeah.
it.
It looks so good. Yes.
So I just want to kind of show you, because you probably couldn't see, but you see the beautiful rainbow of color? That's the way our food should look. You want to use all the different colors of the rainbow, and it all has different nutritional values, so try to put all these beautiful colors in here. So that wasn't really hard to prepare, right? As long as you know how to chop a little bit. And the tofu and the garbanzo are the only two things that we actually cooked. And then what we do next with that is I add some of this. Okay, this is not a good thing to use. There's actually a recipe for this, and next time I'll maybe make that for you. But this time, about half a cup of sweet chili sauce. And then to that, I'm going to add a little bit of either peanut butter, or this one is actually almond butter. So you add a tablespoon. Oh. Why is this so hard?
Because it needs to be stirred.
Okay.
Natural nut butters, if they sit any length of time, have to be, the oils separate because you don't have those harmful trans fats or saturated fats in it. So you just have to stir it up thoroughly, and then if you keep it in the refrigerator, it will stay that way, or at our house, it doesn't last long enough to need to be separated.
So what I wanted to share with you was I usually add the peanut butter to it to add a little bit of the protein, and this, of course, this is just blended peanuts or almonds, which is the best kind of butter to get, not the ones that have added oils or whatever trans fats or whatever that is, and then no sugar either. So then when you add that, about a tablespoon to this, and you stir it up, then you have a beautiful dipping sauce, and then to that dipping sauce, okay, pretend that there's peanut butter or almond butter already mixed in here. And then to that, I like for presentation to add some chopped peanuts, which is a really nice texture to add. And then, of course, you top it off with some cilantro. Doesn't that look pretty? Can you guys see that? Yeah. And then so whenever you just eat that, put some of this lettuce, and then you put some of your chicken wrap thing, not chicken, not chicken, tofu on top, and then you will drizzle your sauce on top, and it's really delicious.
So it's kind of like...
Yes, it's a peanut sweet chili sauce.
Oh, okay.
The other thing you can use is our paper sheets, and use that to wrap them up in. We do that at home all the time, only I have a different recipe for dipping sauce. It's called black Asian sauce. I'm not a spicy fan of sweet, hot
Spicy.
the cayenne out, but oh man, it is good.
You'll have to share that with us then.
So the ingredients that went in here pretty much is the same ingredients for spring roll. All you need to add is your neighbor's friendly neighbor cat's avocado, and you have a really delicious, and maybe a pineapple from your other friend's house. And then you have a perfect spring roll ingredient. You can make this into a spring roll. The rice paper I forgot to bring it. The rice paper just needs to be dipped in water. You shake off all the excess water, put the ingredients in, and then start rolling, and then put this dipping sauce to make homemade. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to get the other recipe. But a recipe like this, and then you have a perfectly healthy, delicious, satisfying meal.
and you're getting all those wonderful vegetables, and like she said, the multicolors. Colors.
Good evening. On behalf of the Guam SDA Clinic, I'd like to welcome you back for another night. We're on day 3, or night 3 out of 4. So do you know what that means? Unfortunately, we're on the second to last night. So if you know someone that hasn't been able to come yet, or don't know about this program, and you've enjoyed the program so far, make sure to invite them, because they have one more chance. What are we talking about tonight? Blood pressure, that's right. And most of you already know our speaker. His name is Dr. David DeRose. He's an award-winning author and a radio host, and we're so happy that he's here. I would tell you about the blood pressure book that he's going to be talking about, and that's available afterward, but I don't want to tell you about it because I wanted to get a copy, and I know they're selling out fast. So I won't tell you about that book, but you'll know all about it by hearing the lecture tonight. By the way, my name is Tim Arakawa. I'm one of the medical directors at the Guam SDA Clinic. And a couple more announcements before we begin. Number 1, reach into your pocket and make sure that your cell phone is on silent or vibrate. All right, so we don't distract anyone from the message. And I also want to remind everyone that there are some surveys. If you haven't had a chance to fill one out, there's going to be a drawing at the end of this session, so you want to get your card, your survey card in there, so you're eligible for some prizes. I think there'll be some books, hopefully not the book that I want, but so fill out a survey. And there will also be a question and answer period after this for 15 minutes. So if you have any questions that come up as you're listening to the talk tonight, remember them so you can ask them later. All right, well, let's welcome Dr. DeRose in a few seconds. Thank you.
It is good to be with you again. Good to see your smiling faces and your enthusiasm. Tonight we are tackling what some are calling one of the world's greatest pandemics, because we truly are in the midst today of a worldwide epidemic, and that epidemic is hypertension or high blood pressure. Yes, those are synonyms. So it doesn't mean that you have to feel stressed to have hypertension. It is just the term that we use medically for high blood pressure. Just how prevalent is it? Just how many people are affected by high blood pressure? If you look at data from around the World Health Organization has compiled this. It is startling. It doesn't matter where you go, whether you can read the fine print or not on these slides. These are slides from around the world. Roughly 30-50% of worldwide, this is what we're seeing. There are no exceptions. No exceptions. So we're talking about something that has a huge, huge impact on health throughout the world. But it's much more than just data. It's more than just numbers. The impact of high blood pressure affecting right now over 1 billion people worldwide is really startling. And it's startling because it's not just someone else's problem. In fact, up until about 3 years ago, we could accurately say there were really only 2 groups of people in the world. One group of people were those who have high blood pressure today. And what was the other group? Those that will have it. That's right, those that will have it. But now, in fairness, in the last 3 years, things have changed a bit, and now I have to say, to be honest, to maintain my integrity as a health professional, I have to say there is a third group. Do any of you know what the third group is? No, it's those who have read our book, okay? 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. Yes, and applied it. That's right. They didn't just read the book, they actually put it into practice. So that's the good news tonight. But let me just show you this data, why it is so startling. This is looking at data using older guidelines. We're going to talk about some of the questions that are going on right now in the medical community about even what numbers we should use for blood pressure. And I'll try to explain to you why there's controversy, at least from my perspective. But I want you to notice, even if we take less stringent guidelines than some are recommending today, if you look at your age, and you've reached that magic age in life, you're past your 50s, you're really in the prime of life. Once we get into our 60s, our age is roughly the percentage of people in our age cohort who have high blood pressure. Let me make this real simple. We'll give you a few questions and see if you'll understand what I'm trying to communicate. Take 65-year-olds in America. What percentage of them have high blood pressure? That's exactly right. How about 78-year-olds? What percentage of 78-year-olds have high blood pressure? That's exactly right. How about 102-year-olds? Yeah, of course it can't be 102%. But what's interesting is as you look at the data, what we're finding, and this is World Health Organization data, it's basically the same worldwide. It's the same worldwide. You look at people in their 70s and roughly, and this is just breaking down things into men and women based on high or low income countries, and in your 70s, roughly 70% of people worldwide have high blood pressure. And this is really startling because many diseases, when you look at world incidence, some countries will have high rates, others will have low rates, but with high blood pressure, it seems to not discriminate at all. If only everything in the world was as unbiased as high blood pressure. Well, if you use newer guidelines, you can see that these figures are even worse. So in November of 2017, many expert groups were saying we're being too lenient on what we call normal blood pressure. And if you look at the data here, you can see instead of 75-year-olds and in that range having 70%, you can look and you can see those numbers are even more startling. Here's a statistic that's even more sobering, perhaps. You today, let's say, are in your mid-50s to mid-60s. You do not have high blood pressure. It has not been diagnosed. What is the likelihood that you will be diagnosed with high blood pressure before you die if you live a normal lifespan? It's in the range of 90%. 90%. So yes, by hyperbole, only two groups. You seem to like my joke about the blood pressure book, but very few of us will evade the grasp of high blood pressure unless we do something different than the average person's doing. And that's what we're here for tonight. We're here to talk about things that we can do. But before we look at that, we need to point out perhaps the obvious, and that is that high blood pressure is dangerous. I say perhaps the obvious because far too many people know they have high blood pressure and are doing absolutely nothing about it. You're right, it does not feel bad. That's exactly right. The World Health Organization, when they published this monograph in 2011, they were looking at non-communicable diseases. Now, a lot of people say, non-communicable diseases, what all does that involve? Well, it involves all the diseases that are not communicable, okay? You say, okay, well, we're talking about non-infectious diseases. So we're not talking about malaria. We're not talking about tuberculosis. We're not talking about HIV. Are you following along? So they're looking at these major diseases that are claiming lives throughout the world. They're looking at heart attack and stroke and diabetes, high blood pressure. So you look at these conditions, and if you look at the things that are killing people, the non-communicable diseases that are killing people, the World Health Organization made a startling observation. And basically that observation was this, that common preventable risk factors largely are driving these killer diseases. And unfortunately, these diseases don't just kill, they maim. But look at this. The leading risk factor worldwide when it comes to dying from non-communicable diseases is what? Is elevated blood pressure. Look at this. 13% of all deaths on our planet could be prevented if we were controlling blood pressure. I mean, that to me is startling. So what we're talking about tonight is really of relevance to everyone, and this is a great time to take just a momentary break, because I need to give you an opportunity to do something. I'm seeing something here in this room that should be disturbing us. With the magnitude of the problem, there are actually empty seats in the room. No, really, and it's disturbing because many of you know people who have high blood pressure. Right now, I'm going to give you just a 10-second break to send a quick text to someone that you know needs to be here. No, really, I'm not kidding you, because there's still time. And really, well, a lot of people say, oh, come on, Dr. DeRose, this is just hyperbole. You're just trying to play with this. I'm not trying to play with it at all. I mean, it's really serious business. And the problem is, just like was pointed out by one of our astute participants here tonight, most people with high blood pressure don't feel bad. And so they're sitting at home with a blood pressure of 170 over 100, and we've got a meeting going on right here that could help them, and they're not here. I mean, isn't that a little bit disturbing to you? I mean, a few of you are a little bit disturbed. Okay, well, that's reassuring a bit. I don't want you to get so disturbed that it raises your blood pressure, you understand, okay? Well, let's just look at some of the things that high blood pressure is associated with. And as you look at the fine print here, you'll see that brain problems, we all have heard about stroke and high blood pressure. This is huge. And you say, well, Dr. DeRose, I see stroke, I see heart attack there. You know, they're not all that bad ways to die. Some people die of cancer. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, it can be a long, lingering death. But, you know, stroke, if you die with a stroke, you just go. That's what happened to my grandfather at 102, you say. Well, there's a problem, though. Let me tell you about a patient who came into my office very first time. He comes in, he's in with his son. I have a very hard time understanding him. He's in a wheelchair. He can't move the right side of his body. His face is paralyzed, too, on half of it. And he has great trouble articulating. It turns out, as I get a history, even though this man is in his 60s, he's been living this way for 20 years. That's right, because of a stroke. So stroke doesn't just kill people, it cripples you, okay? It's the same with heart attacks. Yes, you can die from a heart attack, but a serious heart attack can leave you what's sometimes called a cardiac invalid. You can't walk across the room because you have such profound heart failure. You see also on this list dementia. A leading cause of dementia is elevated blood pressure. If you don't want to have dementia, you need to be concerned about your blood pressure. And you might see some surprising things on this list. Blindness. Kidney failure. This is a shocker to some people. I remember speaking to a group of Native American health professionals, and one of them said, I just came back from visiting with a patient. This individual was in shock. They couldn't believe they had been told by the kidney specialist that they were going on dialysis. They said, well, how can this be? I do not have diabetes. What did they have? That's right, they had uncontrolled high blood pressure and it progressively destroyed their kidney. Now they were getting ready for dialysis. Even in men, this is a surprising one, but prostate problems are linked to high blood pressure. So there's a host of problems. We've talked about a number of them. The bottom line is you don't want high blood pressure. Even though you can often feel fine with it, you want to get serious about knowing where you stand, and if those numbers are high, getting them down. The reason why you want to get them down is because getting those numbers down does decrease your risk of complications. Here's the example of stroke. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 60s or younger. It's never too late to get the benefits of controlling blood pressure. And what you can see here, about a 50% decrease in risk of stroke just by controlling your numbers. So blood pressure control, extremely important. But we've perhaps raised more questions than we've answered. Because I've already told you there's confusion today about blood pressure guidelines. But rather than looking at this as something that should discourage us, I'm saying this is an opportunity for us to get motivated to do more about our blood pressure. Many lay people as well as health professionals are starting to talk about non-drug treatment, and let me tell you why the current discussion brings this into the spotlight. Here's why there's controversy. To some extent, any elevation of your blood pressure above your physiologically lowest attainable blood pressure is undesirable. In other words, if you could get on such a great lifestyle that could optimize your blood pressure, if you could get it down to 100/60, that would be significantly better than 120/80. We'll show you some of the data in a minute. The problem, though, where it gets very confusing is once you get to a certain level of blood pressure, and there may even be some variation from individual to individual, lowering your blood pressure further with medications can cause more problems than benefits. Do you see that? Do you see where this would be problematic? Okay, some of you are kind of saying, what are you talking about? Let me show you some pictures, okay? So if you're not on high blood pressure medications, what the research indicates is that any elevation definitely above 110 systolic is going to increase your risk of cardiovascular complications. Let's take a look. This is a graphic from a study that was published actually many years ago called the Mr. Fit study. Stands for the Multiple Risk Factor Intervention Trial. And although you may not be able to see the fine print, this is dividing the population into tenths, the U.S. population. And what you notice there in that lowest decile, these are the people with the best blood pressures. That's listed as number 1. If you can read the graphic, it's showing you these people on average had their blood pressure below 112 systolic. If you go from that category to the third decile, what we're looking at is a statistically significant difference. Now, we're still looking at the best 1/3 of the population. The best third. These are the people with the best blood pressures. You're now looking at people who might have a blood pressure of 118 or 119 systolic, all the way up to 120. But someone with a blood pressure of 118, this graphic is showing, has a 30% increased risk of dying from heart disease compared to someone who has a blood pressure of, say, 110. That is a significantly increased risk, and it reaches what we call in the medical community statistical significance. If you hear people throwing out that term, it just means that the research suggests this is a real difference. It just didn't happen by chance. So the bottom line is you were patted on the back by your doctor for having a blood pressure of 118, and I would pat you on the back probably too if you're like most patients that come in through the doors of an internal medicine practice, but you would be better off with a blood pressure of 110 systolic. Now, some of you might be getting discouraged. You said my blood pressure was 130. My doctor said it was fine. Let me tell you why some people are saying those numbers are fine. Because once we treat blood pressure, the whole equation changes. This is a graphic looking at some of the best tolerated medications in the world. The 2 best tolerated classes of medications are the angiotensin receptor blockers and the ACE inhibitors. You don't have to know those names. I'm just telling you what they were looking at. 2 drugs from each of these classes, or 1 drug from each class. What I want you to notice here, the highest risk. Now, this is looking at serious events over about a 5-year span. Those of you that are reading that y-axis, the up and down axis, you can see it was 4.5 years. And they were looking at a composite of dying from heart events, having major strokes, heart attacks, things like that. So really bad stuff. The worst people were those with blood pressures in the 160s or higher. Do you see that illustrated there on the far right side of the graphic? What happens when you put someone on medication and get their blood pressure from the 160s down to 149? Do they get benefit? Yes. Do you see that bar comes down? I'm moving from the right side of the graphic to the left side. Do you see what we're doing there? So what happens if you take more medication and get the blood pressure from 149 down to 140? Do you lower risk further? You do. How about if you take more medication and you get the blood pressure down to 130? Have you still further lowered risk? We're on a roll. Why don't we just take more medicine and get the blood pressure down to an ideal level like 112? What do you think of that? Actually, the risk goes up. Do you see what's happening? This is the major reason why there's controversy today. The major reason is because the lower you can get your blood pressure naturally, the better. That's what all the research shows. Now, naturally, we're not talking about having a heart attack and ending up in the intensive care unit, okay? If some of you are saying, well, is it okay to have a blood pressure of 60 over 30? No, you are in cardiogenic shock. You're on the, the verge of the grave. You just had a major heart attack, okay? So this is not good. But we're talking about naturally healthy lifestyle practices. If they get your blood pressure down lower, this is desirable as far as cardiovascular risk. Now, having said all this, there's someone in the room, or maybe a number of you, saying, but Dr. DeRose, my blood pressure runs 86 over 50. I'm healthy, I'm young, I'm thin, and sometimes when I get up out of the chair, I get a bit lightheaded. This is true. If you have lower blood pressure, you will be more prone to getting lightheaded if you change posture quickly. For you, it's very important that you keep well hydrated. You're also prone to something else. Not a big problem in Guam, at least not that I've observed, but if you're outdoors, I haven't run into this problem myself. But if you have low blood pressure, you're more prone to having cold hands and cold feet. Okay? So this could be a serious problem if you lived in North Dakota. Now, I know they keep some of these rooms pretty cool, okay? So some people say, but Dr. DeRose, I don't like to have cold hands and cold feet. I don't like to get lightheaded when I change positions rapidly. Listen, that's a whole lot better than having a heart attack, a stroke, kidney failure, or blindness. Wouldn't you agree? So yes, there's some side effects of lower blood pressure readings, but from a cardiovascular standpoint, this is desirable. Now, I know there's people in the room who are health professionals, and sure, there can be abnormal conditions, hormonal conditions, that can cause dangerously low blood pressures or seriously symptomatic low blood pressure, and we're not talking about those. We're talking about healthy, normal people. Once you add the medications to the equation, you see, though, that everything can change. So at the end of the day, we're going to leave tonight, and some of you are going to say, but I still don't know what my ideal blood pressure should be. Take these two things away. If you have health issues, work with your doctor. Your doctor can look at various factors, your kidney health and other things, and can make recommendations about what an optimal blood pressure level is for you and how much medication should be used. Some people, maybe they should be on more medicine and their blood pressure should be down to 120 or 110 with medication. But when I see that, I'm always getting a bit concerned that maybe they're overtreated based on some of the data we have. Again, for any individual, go with your doctor's recommendations. Fair enough? If you're not on medication, though, and your blood pressure's in the 130s or 140s, and you've been told that was fine, that is really not fine. You want to get serious about the things we're talking about tonight. If you are on medication for blood pressure, I would suggest you get serious about what we're talking about tonight, because every drug carries the potential for side effects, and over time, even drugs that you're tolerating well today can cause you problems down the road. So the bottom line is, let's look at these natural therapies, but before we do, one other key message, and that is this: concern for medications cost, availability, and side effects is actually partly responsible for this epidemic of death and destruction, really, being caused by high blood pressure. The reason I say that is not everyone in the world has access to all the medications. If you look at worldwide data, you'll see some startling things, but first we're going to look at the U.S. data. What you'll notice here is that there's been a growing awareness of high blood pressure. So most people today in America know whether or not they have high blood pressure. Still about 20% of individuals with hypertension are unaware of it. You can see, though, when it moves to actually getting treatment and then to control, we're not doing all that well. Yes, we're doing a lot better than in the 70s, but still fully 50% of the U.S. population does not have their blood pressure adequately treated. And this is with medication, naturally with whatever. And by the way, that's actually good for the world. You look here at worldwide data and you can see control. I mean, on average, even in high-income countries, current data only about 30% of people have their blood pressure controlled. So really the key to curbing this pandemic is to tap in to natural strategies for high blood pressure. These are available everywhere, and that's where we're going to turn our attention. But before we do, I've got to give you one other very important point. One of the reasons that there is growing attention about natural therapies is because of this, the side effects of medications and how they're impacting people's willingness to take blood pressure medications. I have to tell you a story about a patient that came to me some years ago. She had heard that we were helping people get off of their blood pressure medications with natural therapies. She had been diagnosed some 8 months before with high blood pressure. By the time she walked into my office, would any of you like to guess how many medications she had been on? Do you know this story? You heard me tell it? She'd been on 6 medications. That's exactly right. A number of you said that. She had been placed on one medication initially, and she had side effects. A month later, back in the doctor's office, she was switched to a different medication, and what do you think she had? Different side effects. This went on until finally, fortunately, she ended up in my office. Although I don't see her as a patient anymore, I actually gave her a call because she lives in our community. I was thinking about her when we came out with our new book, The Methuselah Factor, and I thought she'd benefit from that book as well. And I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm still off my blood pressure medications. So the point is you can get off medications and you can avoid medications that carry with them side effects. Let's do something, though. It's not fair to talk about side effects without comparing it with untreated high blood pressure, right? I mean, because we could say, oh, you get a bad side effect if you take this pill for your liver. But if you're going to die and you're jaundiced and you're feeling terrible, you know, having itchy skin from the pill is nothing compared to the worst itching that you had from the liver problem, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not fair just to say blood pressure pills cause side effects. But let's look at this comparison here. So you see the first on the list of side effects, of common side effects from common medications used for high blood pressure is frequent urination. Now, for how many of you does that sound like the worst thing you could imagine? No, I mean, we could live with that, right? I mean, it's not, I mean, we wouldn't probably sign up for it, but we could live with it. How about this one, fatigue? Not sounding so good, right? Dizziness? Uncontrollable cough, exercise limitations, sexual dysfunction, depression. Let me ask you an honest question. How many of you, an honest question, so I want an honest answer, right? How many of you would have come tonight if we said we guarantee if you come tonight, you will leave with frequent urination, fatigue, dizziness? Give you this list. How many of you would be here tonight? Okay, an overwhelming lack of hands. But okay, that list doesn't look too compelling as far as things that you would sign up for. But what about the list of typical symptoms of untreated high blood pressure? And we're going to walk through this list, and we want you to compare them. You know, what list looks worse? Did you see that? No. You really saw all that was important, but I'll show it to you a little bit slower. You're a really patient group here. I like this. Did you see it? Yes, none. There are no common symptoms of untreated high blood pressure. Sure, if your blood pressure is really high, you may have headaches, but most people walking around with even significantly elevated blood pressure levels have no symptoms. So tonight, if we had been forward-thinking enough, we would have had blood pressure screening here for you. But it's a little bit unfair, because I'll get some of you stressed out about the whole topic, and then you'll go out there and your blood pressure will be higher than it's ever been, and then you'll think you're about to die. Okay? So better once you get home and you've calmed down a bit, okay, get your blood pressure checked. Make sure you're keeping on top of it, because remember, most people with normal blood pressure all their life at some point switch over to having high blood pressure. We're going to have a question and answer session when we conclude my formal presentation. And if you have real difficult questions, real difficult material, we've saved it for the question and answer, because that's when I'll have help from my wife, okay? So if you're wondering about some of these relationships, I'm not going to tell you much about this slide, just that even the best tolerated medications today, only about 2/3 of people stick with them for even a year. Okay? So this is really, really important that we catch this message of controlling our blood pressure with a better approach. What I like to sometimes say is people get more stressed out by the medications than they were being stressed by the high blood pressure. Is there a better way? Might there be a no-pressure solution to high blood pressure? Now, by a no-pressure solution, I'm not talking about getting your pressure down to 0/0. Some of you understand we have a technical diagnosis for this in the medical community, blood pressure of 0/0. Do any of you know the diagnosis? That's right, it's called death, okay? So that's not our goal. We're not talking about a goal of no pressure, but we're talking about a program that doesn't stress you out, okay? No pressure in that respect. So no pressure is actually a framework for controlling your blood pressure naturally. If you can remember this phrase, no pressure, you think you could do that? You think when you walk out tonight, if someone said, what was one of the take-home messages? You could say no pressure. You think you could hold on to that? No pressure, you see, is a mnemonic. I know it went by quick for you there. We're trying to incentivize speed reading in these meetings. But no pressure is a mnemonic for 10 categories of natural approaches to controlling your blood pressure, okay? 10 categories of natural approaches. The first one you see there is nutrition. Optimal choice of beverages, physical exercise. I know some of you say, this is exciting. Rest. Environment. Environment can affect your blood pressure. It can. Let me just pause and make a point here. Because a lot of people say, well, what does environment have to do with it? Do you know where you sleep affects your blood pressure? Did you know that? If you are living in a home or an apartment near a busy road, your blood pressure will be higher than if you live in a more quiet community. You say, this is really discouraging, Dr. DeRose. I have a reverse mortgage. I can't move. No, don't get discouraged, because if you just move your bedroom, they've studied this. You move your bedroom away from the side of the street that's busy, you know, the side of the house that has the busy street, you move to the other side and your blood pressure will go down. Isn't that remarkable? Now, some of you are smiling. Others of you are getting more sober looks on your face because you live in a one-bedroom studio apartment, okay? One-room studio apartment, right? Yeah, you say, I can't move. Well, then get some earplugs. Really? This will actually lower your blood pressure. So each of these things, just to reassure you, each of these categories, we have a whole chapter in our book, 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. And to save you buying the book, you can ask any question about it in the question and answer series. But we won't have time to go through every one of these, but we are going to take some of the high points. Some of you think, well, you're just trying to sell your book that nobody wants. Actually, more than once over the last year, not uncommonly, this book is sometimes the #1 bestseller in the preventive medicine category. I haven't looked this week. The Amazon rankings change every hour. On this particular day in January, it was the #5 bestseller in print for blood pressure. You say, well, you just picked a day where it was really good. This is a number of months later, fairly recently, April 10th. It was the #5 bestseller in Kindle's cardiology and preventive medicine categories. So my point is, there's plenty of people buying the book. We don't have to give lectures to sell the book. We're not trying to get rid of a bunch of books in my garage, okay? So we're here because we're trying to help you and give you tools, and the book is extremely valuable because we're actually finding not only has the book won a number of awards, not only are we doing events at bookstores and at community events, but really we're finding when people use our book along with accompanying videos and community programs, on average we find people with high blood pressure dropping their blood pressure about 17 points in the upper number and about 8 points in the lower number. So what we're talking about is real, it works, and we're seeing these results. So if you've got blood pressure concerns, we want to encourage you to engage with this material. And remember, those of you who've been coming from night to night, I have never told any one of you that you have to buy any of my videos or books. I've told you a much better strategy. Okay? Some of you are laughing. You've got it. And I saw some of this taking place. We'll have a table out there with the materials. You don't have to buy the materials. Just be observant, okay? And when someone buys, say, my video, Reversing Hypertension Naturally, you do what? Remember? That's right. When you see the person, after they make the payment, now it's their video, walk up to them. Say, you look like a very astute person. And make their acquaintance, and then plan to watch the video with them, okay? Yes, to share. We'll talk more about social support and why that's so important. We also have some free resources for you. So if you go to our website, and some of you have already memorized our website, compasshealth.net, we have a video series that complements what we're talking about tonight and tomorrow night. It's totally free. 5-minute videos once a day for 30 days. And in fact, what I'm really excited about is these videos will be used in some upcoming programs right here in Guam. Okay? So what I mean by that is, how many of you know what's coming up on Sunday of this week? I see a few of you raising your hands. What's going on? There's a class that's going to be taking place at the Guam SDA Clinic. Have I got the place right? Okay, everyone seems to be saying yes. And this class is going to be using some of the materials we've talked about here, like our Longevity Plus video material. It will be talking about lowering your blood pressure naturally as well as other things, and you can come absolutely free of charge. All you've got to do is make sure you come to all the meetings. Now, why am I saying it that way? That's right, there's a $30 charge, but you get your money back if you attend all the sessions. Have I got how the program works? What time does the program start? It starts at 4 o'clock. And is it correct that there's a price because you're actually serving food? You do some activity together. There's a group activity, there's food served, and there's the presentation and interaction. Have I got the outline right? Okay, some people who act like they know what's going on say that is correct. So it's going to be a great program, a great opportunity for you. And these videos actually complement what you'll be doing over the course of the month. They'll be assigning you to watch these videos. So you'll be doing something each day, watching one of these 5-minute videos, and then you'll have the weekly classes. You'll hear tomorrow night about another great event that's taking place right here in Guam that's going to be dealing with diabetes, and you can use this resource as well as you attend that program. That's really exciting, and you'll hear about that tomorrow night. So again, remember compasshealth.net. If you want our free resources, that is your place to go. Go to the free resource section there. Well, you say, very good. Let's talk some then about these factors in the time that we have remaining. Let's talk about nutrition first of all, because this is so critical as far as optimally controlling blood pressure. 3 main areas we tackle in the book that we'll touch on tonight. One is increasing your consumption of plant foods. The second one actually is controlling your calories and losing weight if you're overweight. Relatively small decreases in weight can have measurable benefits as far as blood pressure, and we'll learn tomorrow night as far as diabetes and blood sugar control. The last one that you saw flash by very quickly is decreasing your salt intake, and of course the main message there is don't drink the water when you're swimming on the beach, right? No, there's more serious places where you'll be exposed to sodium, and we'll talk about that in perhaps a few minutes. The big question is, do typical dietary practices really make a difference? Some years ago, I was in a public venue. I think it was a grocery store, as I recall, and someone came up to me, Dr. DeRose, I was at your lecture 6-8 months ago, and it totally changed my life. So some of you are thinking, boy, that must be a really big ego trip, Dr. DeRose. You must have thought you were some great speaker, motivational speaker. Well, actually, there was no thought at all of that, because the next words out of this guy's mouth were these, but it had nothing to do with anything that you said. So I'm thinking, well, what is this guy talking about? He comes to my lecture, it changed his life, it had nothing to do with anything I said. He said it was that one picture that you showed, that one graphic. Wow, it changed his whole life. How many of you would like to see that graphic? Well, get the book. It's in the 5th chapter. No, I wouldn't do that to you. It is in the 5th chapter of the book, but it's also right here, okay? So this was the graphic that changed his life. And by the way, My wife she's enjoyed Guam so much. Normally when I'm giving a talk, she doesn't want me to tell people to take pictures of the images. You know, she wants you to buy the book because she's the business manager, okay? But she likes the people of Guam so much, you know, she wouldn't even mind if you don't want to buy the book. Just say you want to look at the book for a while, go off in the corner, take pictures of all the, we've got, yeah, we make sure you got plenty of memory on your device because we've got over 100 graphics and tables in the book, okay? But if you did that, you'd cut them some slack, wouldn't you? Boy, even with the good time she's had in Guam, she's equivocating a bit. So anyway, what is this graphic showing? This graphic is looking at nearly 90,000 people and their habitual dietary practices. The blue bars on the far left for both diabetes and high blood pressure show people who are on the typical American diet. As you move to the red bars, you move to people that, if I see them in my practice and I say, what is your diet like? And they say, Dr. DeRose, I am basically a vegetarian. When they say that to me, I know they're what we call a semi-vegetarian. Okay, that means they're eating red meat, poultry, and fish less than once a week. Does cutting down on your animal products make a difference as far as your likelihood of having high blood pressure and diabetes? It does. It makes a measurable difference. But you're even better to move to a pesco-vegetarian. That means you get rid of the poultry and the red meat. So all the meat's out of the program, but you're eating fish and plant products and dairy as well, and eggs. So those are all included in what's called a pesco-vegetarian diet. But you lower your risk of diabetes and high blood pressure further by leaving off the fish. And we're just talking about the research, what it shows. And you lower your risk the most by being on a total vegetarian diet. Some people say, Dr. DeRose, I'm not doing it. Well, you don't have to do it. This is just the data showing you the direction that's associated with the best results. Now, some of you, if you're health professionals, you say, Dr. DeRose, this is cross-sectional data. This is just looking at people at one point in time and what they've been doing for years. What happens if someone actually changes their lifestyle? Well, all the research is in agreement. A review was done some years ago, and what they found is as you incorporate more plant foods into your diet, your blood pressure comes down, whether it's, quote, abnormal, high blood pressure, or even if it's in the, quote, normal range, but higher than optimal. Eat more plant foods, and you will lower your blood pressure. Why is this? One of the reasons has to do with phytochemicals. This is absolutely amazing. What they have found is that there are a host of plant foods that are loaded with compounds that have natural blood pressure lowering effects. One of the most commonly prescribed classes of blood pressure medications are called the ACE inhibitors. What is amazing to me is there are ACE inhibitory compounds, drug-like compounds that are incorporated into foods. Here's the list. If you ate broccoli today, it was helping you to naturally lower your blood pressure. If you had soybeans or mung beans, if you had peanuts, sunflower seeds, wheat, corn, potatoes, garlic, rice, you see the list. Now, some people look at this and they get worried. They say, Dr. DeRose, but I love broccoli. Could I go into shock from eating too much broccoli? Well, I mean, sure, if you have an anaphylactic reaction, if you're allergic to it, but you wouldn't be telling me you love broccoli if that was the case. The wonderful thing about eating plant foods is we have never, ever seen, I've never seen anyone, never heard of a case report of anyone ending up in the emergency room because they ate too much rice, garlic, and chickpeas. Okay? So it's totally safe. Whereas when you start talking about drug therapies, you can have serious and even life-threatening complications, especially from taking too much. This leaves us at a point where we must make a point. If you get excited about what we're talking about, and by the way, unbridled enthusiasm is appropriate when we're talking about this, okay? But if you get excited and you decide to start implementing these things, I recommend, if you're on medications, that you talk with your healthcare provider. You say, I can't get in to see my doctor for 3 months. Well, at least call the doctor's office and let them know you're going to be making some changes in your lifestyle, and you're going to be keeping close tabs on your blood pressure, and you'll keep in touch with them. Because really, this is powerful stuff, and it's very likely you will have to have changes in your blood pressure medications. That is not something to do on your own. Some medications are dangerous to stop on your own. They can trigger a heart attack, or they can trigger something called rebound hypertension, where your blood pressure goes higher than it's ever been. So don't manage your medications on your own. Work with your healthcare provider, okay? Let's talk about social support. Social support we've been talking about in these meetings, and if you've already picked up on something that I have a special concern about when I travel, is that I want to see people connecting with other people in their community who have a mindset to achieve the same goals. What we know about social connectedness is if you connect with more people, if you have better social relationships, you will have lower blood pressure. There's a number of lines of research that indicate this. I'm not going to go through it with you, but I want to tell you about one particular study. It's not the one that I'm showing you. This was a fascinating study. It was mapping obesity, which is one of the driving factors for high blood pressure. It was mapping obesity in the United States. And what they did is the researchers looked at the spread of obesity over time. It started from a hot spot in Greene County, Alabama, and it spread like an infectious disease. Now, I don't know how it's gotten over to Guam, because it's a long way from California to Guam. But the point was, in the mainland U.S., obesity rates were increasing as if they were an infection. The researchers, in commenting on the study, made a point that it was more likely who your friends were than your individual lifestyle habits that was driving the epidemic of obesity. Now, I'm not saying I fully agree with them, but their point was well taken. If you want to have better health, who do you want to hang out with? People that are interested in their health. So here's the big question. Some of you are here for the first night. Where can you find people in Guam who are highly motivated to improve their health? That's right, here tonight. That's exactly right. And some of these people will be coming back tomorrow night. So where do you want to be tomorrow night? Here. Yes, if you want better health, you want to come back. And by the way, there's still seats. I know it's a tragedy, but tomorrow night we're going to find that if you didn't think you needed to be concerned about your high blood pressure, or your blood pressure period, you learned tonight you should be, right? Tomorrow night, you're going to find that if you thought you didn't need to be concerned at all about diabetes, you definitely need to be concerned. So those of you who most need to be here tomorrow night, are those of you who think you're not going to come. Okay? Do you understand my point? If you think you're not going to come tomorrow night, you need to be here. Those of you that are planning to come tomorrow night, it's okay for you to come too. Okay? So in other words, none of you have an excused absence. You can talk with Carmen, though. She might give you... Where is Carmen anyway? Where is she hiding out? Oh, she's hiding out there. Okay, that's Carmen. Have you met Carmen? Yes. You can give excused absences, can't you? Carmen, among other things, is the stage manager. Okay, so if I'm doing something inappropriate up here, you talk with Carmen and she'll straighten me out before tomorrow's meeting. Okay? So social support, really important stuff. Use of natural adjuncts. This is the subject of the 12th chapter in our book. We go through, what we did is and I say we, because I had two co-authors on the book, Dr. Greg Steinke, who's also a double-boarded physician, so I have boards in internal medicine and preventive medicine. Dr. Steinke has boards in family practice and in preventive medicine. And then Trudy Lee, who is a nurse practitioner. And so as we worked together on this, we said, there's so many supplements that can have some favorable effects on blood pressure. How do we find the best ones? And so we went through the medical literature. We looked at review articles, things where experts have summarized things, and we put these in the 12th chapter of the book. We're going to touch on just a few examples to give you an idea of the power of judicious use of supplements. But before I do, I have to tell you unequivocally, there is no supplement known to man or has been studied that is as powerful as a comprehensive lifestyle approach to dealing with high blood pressure, our subject tonight, subject tomorrow. Too many people, in my experience, say they're interested in natural therapies, and really all they're interested in is trading a prescription drug for a, quote, natural pill. My point that I'm making is this is not the best strategy. The best strategy is look at these other elements here, emphasize those. The backup strategy is using these supplements because if anything, they're costly, and if supplements are powerful enough to lower your blood pressure, they are going to be powerful enough to cause the potential for some side effects. So here you can see a list. This is a list that was published in the research literature of naturopathic physicians, and what they were using, they looked at their practices to help with blood pressure lowering. You can see the most frequently prescribed thing was omega-3 fats. So these omega-3 fats do have blood pressure lowering properties. They're also anti-inflammatory. Magnesium. Many people today are low in magnesium. One of the reasons for it is commonly prescribed digestive medications can undermine your ability to optimally absorb magnesium. Very important point. Coenzyme Q10, you see, was the third leading prescribed supplement. We could talk about all these things in some detail, but let me give you the coenzyme Q10 results. Coenzyme Q10, this is a review article that looked at a number of different studies looking at CoQ10, and what you can see here is pretty significant blood pressure lowering in the range of 15 points systolic and in the range of 8 or 10 points diastolic. So there is a place for supplementation. But again, emphasize that after using other natural strategies. Our time for this portion of the lecture is just about slipped away. We talked about one of the high points for environment. Let me mention the last one, because sometimes this raises a few eyebrows. When we wrote the book, we were not writing the book to any particular spiritual audience. But when Dr. Steinke and Trudy Lee and I, we looked at the research, we said we cannot write a book and do justice to all the natural strategies unless we talk about spiritual factors. Whether you realize it or not, spiritual factors have been linked to powerful blood pressure lowering effects. The challenge we had, though, is how could we write a chapter that appealed to people who were Buddhists as well as people who were Muslim? How could we write to Christians as well as to Jews? How could we write to atheists and agnostics? How could we find spiritual principles that bridged that whole spectrum of spirituality? What we found is that there were 8 principles of spiritual health that we included in that chapter. We called them 8 timeless prescriptions to optimal health. And I will actually be talking about that in another venue Saturday morning. If you're interested, you can talk with Carmen about that. But it's in the 14th chapter of the book. We also have a video that goes along with it called Spiritual Health, Neglected Dimensions. But it is now time for your questions. So Sonia is making her way up here, and she is going to help me out. So I tried to leave off any of the real difficult subjects so you can ask about them when Sonia's up here. I hope she's hurrying. Okay, we've got a mic back here. The lights are coming on in the auditorium here, and we will take your questions. Okay, some are delaying because they didn't see Sonia. There she is. Okay.
Could you tell us the 8 factors, the spiritual that you had mentioned?
What's the question?
So you're asking about these 8 elements, these 8, okay, is it the so-called 8 doctors? Some people have popularized these so-called 8 doctors. Sonia, why don't you tell them what they are?
So the first one is nutrition, then exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, fresh air, rest, and trust in divine power.
So it's called New Start, and you can see New Start is pretty similar to the acronym we have up here, No Pressure, but that is not the focus of the 14th chapter. The 14th chapter was best crystallized by what is arguably across denominational lines. Many people refer to this person as one of the world's greatest teachers. You may have heard of him. His name actually often simply called Jesus. Have you heard? You've heard that name here. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount articulated these principles that my Muslim patients, New Age patients, they've told me resonate with them. Things like humility, forgiveness. It's in the Beatitudes, those blessings that he gave at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. So that's what we used in the 14th chapter of the book as the framework for spiritual health, and that's what I'll be talking about in some detail Saturday morning.
I would like to know, or let's put it this way, every morning my blood pressure is pretty low, maybe 100 over 60 or something. But during the day it's 120 over 80. So what is my blood pressure?
Well, to get an accurate reading of your blood pressure, you want to be sitting down for at least about 5 minutes, resting, because that's the baseline blood pressure that we're looking at. Your blood pressure, of course, will go up as you're exercising, walking around. Stress obviously can raise it as well. So what we base it on is when you're sitting at rest.
Now, blood pressure, having said that, does fluctuate during the day as well. So we look at the mean or the average blood pressure throughout the day, and the point I would simply make is, like Sonia's saying, your blood pressure may be staying around 100 over 60 if you're at rest throughout the day, and it's just that you're not using the proper technique and resting appropriate and other things. We have, in the book, we have the proper way to check the blood pressure. Even health professionals have told me they were checking their own blood pressure incorrectly. So take a look at that, and that'll be helpful to you. Next question. There's a hand up here.
Sorry. Was it this one here? This one?
Oh, there's one right here at the front.
So what you want to do is you want to raise your hand all the way up so I can see it. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, wait, did it?
Oh, no. Okay, no problem. Okay.
Right here.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, it's okay. I need it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so you talked about having lots of fruits and vegetables. To me, I saw the word peanuts up there in the chart, and so there's a lot of peanuts out there with salt and roasted. We don't want those, right? We want just the plain peanuts, the raw peanuts. Is that what we're looking for? Or the shells?
Anytime you roast a nut, you're adding oil and typically salt. So yes, but dry roasted, typically, I said, you can dry roast nuts as well. Like peanuts, you don't have to add oil and salt, and dry roasted is just as healthy as raw, and it makes it a lot easier to make peanut butter out of it. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to blend raw peanuts, but it doesn't work really well.
Okay. And they say, I've been reading on YouTube, or I don't know, bananas are not that great for us because they're too high in potassium, and they're ugly foods. And so I'm getting mixed up because I always thought bananas were healthy.
Bananas are a healthy food, and potassium is a very healthy mineral. So
we can't overdose on that, right?
I mean, not by eating bananas, certainly.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then you talked about when you're lightheadedness, make sure you have some water. When you're when you have lightheadedness, make sure you have water. Have you ever heard of Cajun water or Cajun? Have you ever heard of that water?
Kangen water, you mean?
Yeah, Kangen water. Have you heard of that?
Yes, we have heard of it.
Is that a good thing or what? Is that a makeup thing or what?
I don't have any problem with someone wanting to use it, but I certainly wouldn't spend the amount of money on a machine to make it.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you mentioned this because we did have someone send in a question about, alkalinizing the body, and this is one of the big claims for some of these units. We're not going to say there's not a benefit to having a diet that promotes more alkalinity. That's basically a plant-based diet that does that. But the evidence doesn't suggest that the benefits are mainly because of some alkaline, we call ash residue. Really, you do want good water filtration, and that is important, but you don't need to spend thousands of dollars. Now, if you've got one of these units and it's helping you and you're doing wonderfully, we're not saying to throw it away. But the point we're trying to make is we work with populations. And when we make recommendations to populations, we have to recommend things that are evidence-based, that are readily accessible. So some of these high-end things, we're not saying there's nothing good about them, okay? Don't misunderstand our emphasis. But we're saying you don't need these things to have good health and get good quality water, okay?
Now, doctor, you mentioned that where you sleep at night might affect your blood pressure. What about people who seem to sleep with these things all night long? You didn't say anything about cell phones and sleeping.
Yes, a lot of people recommend keeping it out of the bedroom at night. Certainly, eliminating screen time within an hour of bedtime is helpful, especially if your phone doesn't have the setting, the sunset setting, because the blue rays that are emitted from all these electronic devices suppresses the production of melatonin, and it will definitely interfere with your sleep.
Yeah, if you're getting stressed, to see that rest is one of the things that helps lower your blood pressure, we have a 3-page table in the book, in the rest chapter, about the best sleep hygiene techniques, natural things you can do to go to sleep. And again, if you think I'm selling the book, you can get that table free just by going to our website. Okay, so we've reproduced that table on the website under the free materials. Okay, other questions? Who's got the mic?
I'd like to get your take on the Eat Right for Your Blood Type diet, where the author indicates that depending on your blood type, there are some foods that are beneficial and there are some foods that are bad for you.
Well, a lot of people get help from these diets, and the reason why is they give some things that are good advice for people with each of the blood types. But there actually is very little science that correlates blood type with any diseases. There are some connections, but there really is no profound reason to be on a different diet than your husband or wife or brother or sister because your blood type is different, okay? So the general messaging about blood health, hemorrheology, we talked about a couple nights ago, is the same messaging about hypertension prevention and diabetes prevention, and it's eating more of these plant foods. Now, if you are sensitive to a particular food, well, don't eat it. You know, if you break out in a rash, this isn't good for you. And don't make that a rule for everyone else in your family if they can tolerate it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So what is the optimal blood pressure reading?
Well, the research shows that if it's under 112 over like 70 or 71 is actually optimal, if you can keep it under that. Now, that doesn't mean it's under that when you're exercising, when you're out jogging or something, but in a resting setting.
Yeah, so remember, that's free-living people, and we can't say, I mean, as you get lower and lower blood pressures, there's less and less people. So we can clearly say that, 110 is better than 118 from the data. But remember, this is in people who are not taking medications. So once you add medications to the equation, everything changes, and then you need to work with your doctor based on what that ideal pressure is, because they're going to weigh your kidney health, your heart health, and other things.
Hi. Going back to the peanuts, legumes, beans, that family, is it true that it causes your uric acid to go up and also arthritis? Or is it just a myth?
I'm not, maybe Dr. DeRose, the other Dr. DeRose is, I'm not aware of that being an issue.
Well, I think with Sonia's talking about judicious amounts. Sure, purines. Okay, these are the constituents that are made into uric acid. They're in protein foods, and legumes do contain purines. So if you eat a lot of them, yes, but we don't arbitrarily. I don't, and Sonia doesn't. We don't say for patients that have gout that they have to exclude all the bean family. But it is true that eating large amounts of them are a problem. The bigger problem that's off most people's radar screen, as far as what we see in the diet today, is the high fructose corn syrup, because this is also contributing to gout. So alcoholic beverages. So a lot of these things that aren't on the screen, people just focus on the protein, which is true. The animal protein is probably the worst, but we would never say that you can just eat all the beans you absolutely want. I mean, that can contribute to higher uric acid levels. But like Sonia's saying, is we don't exclude it from the diet. It's not a problem to include some of them. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. DeRose. We have 3 minutes for Q&A. Could you raise your hand up really high over here?
Some over here.
Beep, beep. Sorry, Tina, could you pass this down, please? Right there.
Good evening. High blood pressure. If we have high blood pressure, the doctor would ask us, do your parents have high blood pressure? Is it because we inherited it genetically, or we inherited the way they eat?
Actually, it can be both. There are definitely genetic components. There's also components, for instance, if your mother was stressed when she was pregnant with you during approximately weeks 26 to 34, about when your kidneys were forming in utero, you may have only half the number of nephrons, the filtering units in the kidney, as a normal person, and that will destine you to having high blood pressure, or at least greatly increase your odds of having high blood pressure as an adult or later in life.
Next question? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the bottom line, there are genetic and lifestyle factors, and both can run in families.
Thank you. The first session, there was mention about taro and breadfruit. You were going to look things up for us?
Okay, you guys are really holding my feet to the fire. I'm glad I told you to remind me to look up taro and breadfruit, and I'm glad you've reminded me. So perhaps tomorrow night. Yeah. So as you're leaving tonight, make sure some more of you remind me. Or find Carmen, and because she sent us this concern about some of the alkalinity and all that was also in the back of our mind. So someone else told me to remember something tonight, and because I haven't read my book, The Methuselah Factor, lately, anyway, you guys can take a joke. I realize that.
And you'll address that tomorrow. You'll address it tomorrow.
What will I address
You'll be able
tomorrow?
to. It'll be great.
Taro and
Right?
breadfruit?
Taro, yes, absolutely.
Taro?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take our last question right here.
Okay, we're going to squeeze in one more question?
Yes.
Okay. I hope this guy's going to be gentle with me and not remind me of more of my sins. Okay.
Thank you. I've been taking something called trace minerals, which is a concentrate from the Great Salt Lake, and I'm assuming it's really salty. But I'm taking it because I want the minerals. I don't feel like I'm getting minerals from reverse osmosis water, which is all that I drink.
Well, trace minerals definitely, can be healthful. However, you want to be really, really careful because sometimes those sources of trace minerals are very contaminated. We had a patient who was having all kinds of health issues, and it turns out that he was taking trace minerals. It almost seems to me that he mentioned they were coming from the Great Lakes. I'm not sure about that, Great Salt Lake, but anyway, he had severe arsenic poisoning, and the state health department got involved, or county health department. It turned out that the supplement he was taking of all these trace minerals was loaded with arsenic. So just be really careful. You might want to have it checked out and make sure that it's a clean source.
Well, again, sodium is sodium, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's Celtic salt or whether it's, I'm not saying there aren't, whether Himalayan salt, I'm not saying there aren't some other nutrients or other trace minerals that might be there, but you can actually look, you can get the nutrition information. Yeah, and see how much sodium is in there, and it's going to be similar, in many cases, to table salt. And this is one of the things in many people that does seem to contribute to higher blood pressure. Okay, well that is it for tonight. I think, Carmen, do you have the last word? Or does someone else have the last word?
That was the last word.
Oh, really?
No, I have the last word. Hold on, I'm sorry. You know what? Tell us what's coming up tomorrow.
Okay, we will tell you what's coming up tomorrow, but before we do, we'll tell you what's coming up tonight. When we slip out, we're going to be out in the foyer area there in the entryway. Our resources are out there. If you'd like us to sign anything, we'll be available to do that. If you don't want us to sign anything, just quickly slip out. Don't walk by our table, and we won't sign it. Okay? Tomorrow night we're focusing, although the topic is listed as diabetes beyond the Methuselah factor, we're going to be talking about especially insulin resistance. That's what's driving the diabetes epidemic. We all need to be concerned about this. If insulin is not working as well in your body as it should be, you're at higher risk of all kinds of problems, and that will be the focus tomorrow night. We'll not only talk about why it's a concern, but we'll show you practical things you can do to help insulin work better in your body, help you with diabetes, help you never get diabetes, ideally if you don't have it today. And we'll also save time for your questions and answers. We may even leave a little bit more time tomorrow night for questions and answers. And if you have questions that haven't been answered throughout the week, I don't know, Carmen, can we do that?
You know what, we actually can. And just before you conclude, before you go on any further, should this island be concerned about their children and diabetes? Are we seeing higher numbers of diabetes in our children?
Oh, I mean, it's an epidemic, and it's an epidemic especially in people that have indigenous roots. That's true in you with, indigenous roots here in Guam. It's true of our Native Americans, but it's a worldwide, again, like the blood pressure, is what we call a pandemic. So we need to be concerned about diabetes, no question.
Thank you so much, Drs. DeRose, Dr. David, and Dr. Sonia DeRose. Thank you so much. Hold on just a moment. For those of you who filled out a survey card, we're just going to go ahead and draw some names right here I have with me. Dr. Tim Arakawa. And Dr. Tim Arakawa, what are we giving away this evening?
Oh, we are giving away my favorite book, the book that I was afraid that you were going to give away. And someone's going to get my book, 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. And we have 2 of those, and then we also have a couple DVDs as well. So Carmen, how are we going to do this?
So you are going to draw a name. So we're going to do this quickly because we know that there are people that want to dash out of here. You've got other things to do. Oh man. Raylam Irishdell. Trishdell? Hey, congratulations. I'm sorry. I'm normally really good at this. I'm very sorry about that. Okay, congratulations. Okay. Congratulations. Enjoy that. Here you go. Okay, Okay. Jonathan Sardoma. Dell Living Good, you have a DVD, Health Neglected Dimensions, and then this is Dell Living Good, congratulations. This one here, and this is our last one, congratulations. Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, go ahead, mix it up, and then you pick one. All right, here we go. Cynthia Tillmore, congratulations. You can take this book home. This book is awesome. In it, you'll see on the second half of the table of contents, just follow it. It's amazing. You'll see that there's a 6-week program that you can follow. It's life-changing. So congratulations. Thank you so much to all of you who have attended tonight. We really, really look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Dr. Arakawa?
Good night, everyone. On behalf of the SDA Clinic, please come back tomorrow night and invite a friend. See you tomorrow.